The journey to healing is one filled with small steps every day. It is personal to each one of us. Grief will change you, but it will not break you. Hello everyone, thank you so much for tuning into After Dark with myself, Kayise. Now on today's episode, we're going to be dealing with how to survive grief. The purpose is to help provide assistance and some coping mechanisms for those who are left behind. I'm also joined by Penny Mkhize, who's an HR specialist, and she's here to share a little bit about her story. Penny, hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm good.
You're
But
good.
nervous, but yeah, I'm here.
Feel free. This is a space for you to talk.
Of course.
Thank you so much for joining us. You are doing incredibly well as an HR specialist. You provide, coping mechanisms, and you help a lot of people to deal with their mental issues within the workspace. But what a lot of people don't know is that you have a story of your own. Could you please share that with us?
My mom was murdered at the hands of her fiance at the time. And it was a really, really dark time for my family. These things you read about in the newspapers, you hear about it, on the TV. You never really think that, this can eventually happen to me. But it did. And it was surreal.
Could you take us through what exactly happened the day your mother was murdered?
It was first my cousin. They no, they are on the. They asked me where I am. I'm like, I'm at my place. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm getting up for work. And before that cousin of mine called me, the sister of that cousin called me, and they're like, where are you? Like, I'm at my place. She's like, I'm so sorry. Oh, she's like, I'm so sorry, Mzala. Like, why are you sorry? And then she realized that I don't know anything. And then she's like, that I haven't seen you for so long. And then she dropped the phone. And then it was this cousin of mine. And then I was like thinking, you know what, let me just get up and just go shower and get ready for work.
At the time, is your mind alluding to anything about your mother? Anything about anybody else in your family, maybe?
None whatsoever. What was mind-boggling was, here are these cousins of mine. It's not normal for both of them to call me at the same time, and they are siblings.
Okay.
It was like, oh, okay, like whatever. I wake up, I go bath. As soon as I'm done showering, while I'm showering, the cousin who was asking me where I was, they now are at my place.
And you're still not feeling...
Yeah, they missed me.
Enlightened a little bit that something's wrong.
They're like, they missed me. Okay, get ready for work, And as I'm putting on my makeup, they're like, no, please have a seat. They're like, last night your mom got into a fight with Upumlani, who was my mom's fiance. And he shot your mom. And I'm like, the first thing on my mind was, where's my mom? Is she okay? And I asked the question, where is she? Is she okay? And now I'm frantic. They're like, no, she didn't make it. The whole flat in Pretoria, we had 16 stories. The whole flat, including everybody in it, heard me going berserk. They didn't know how to tell me. That was my best friend. That was my everything. How do you tell somebody who, what I worshipped my mom, I worshipped the ground that my mom walked on. Then how do you tell me that very same person who was my world is no more? So I understood from their point of view that my mom passed on a Tuesday evening. While I was thinking about, I haven't spoken to my mom. This is going on. My mom is being murdered.
Yeah. And I would presume then time to prepare for the funeral and
Can you imagine that my cousin
logistics,
passed away on a Monday and he had hanged himself.
Yeah.
My mom on a Tuesday, she was killed. So in my family,
It's turmoil.
it's turmoil. Totally. Like people could not even feel anymore because people were still grieving for my cousin because of the grossness of what had transpired. Now they have to deal with a murder. It was a murder-suicide because he killed himself as well. It was just too much.
Penny, it's been over a decade since your mother's passing. You're beautiful, you're smart, you've achieved so much. What would you say helped you get where you are?
I would have so many triggers. There'd be so many triggers that I would not necessarily be able to control myself. I'll cry in a taxi, I'll cry with my friends, I'll cry at work, I'll cry anyway. Whenever there was a trigger, I would not be able to handle it. And that was when I saw that there has to be something greater to this because I cannot feel the same way every single day.
Yeah.
And one of my great mentors, Umambas, said, one thing that I want you to know is that God did not cause this. God may have allowed it to happen, but he did not cause it. He will never cause so much hurt. You don't know what lied ahead of you. So you need to look at things in that perspective because I'd lost faith in everything. For me, my life was over. For me, going to sleep was a way for me to connect with my mom. That I can connect.
How so?
That I can connect to the other world.
Yeah.
In a dream, in any way. That I was ready, even to die. That I was ready to be with my mom.
As long as it gave you an opportunity to be with your mother.
As long
spiritually.
I could not. I was sleeping all the time. I was just deeply depressed to a point where nobody. It was a very dark hole. So, and then Mambasi said, "How you will know that you are getting better? I cannot prescribe to you what should happen to you in your grieving process, but how you will know that you're getting better is that you start crying less every single day. Every single day will be less and less. And every single day was less and less. The pain was still there, but it was less and less. And sometimes I felt guilty.
And that's a big one. That's a big one because I think with grief, personally for me, I found that, I do feel guilty when I find myself happy. When I'm happy and I'm consumed by a moment that gives me joy. And then it kind of makes me feel like perhaps I'm starting to forget.
You're forgetting. Of course, definitely. That guilt is like whenever I remember, it took me 3 months to laugh.
Do you actually remember the moment that you laughed?
Oh yeah, I did.
Do you remember what made you laugh?
I do.
What was that?
It was 3 months after my mom had passed on, and Mambasi was like, "No, you need to come to an event with me, and I'm not taking a no for an answer. We are going to this event." It was in Melrose, I remember. We went there, and if anybody knows Ma, how funny she is, she's like laughing. She's like,
I know. She was my boss.
She is like rolling on the floor.
Yeah. It doesn't take life too seriously.
It doesn't take life too seriously. And I genuinely, when you genuinely laugh from your belly, not laughing because you want the awkwardness to stop because everybody else expects you to react in a certain way. Then you release that certain laugh or a smile.
Trying to accommodate them.
Trying to accommodate everybody so that they can just leave you alone. No, it was from my belly. It was in December.
And it felt good.
And it felt good. And it felt good. I was like, I think, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. That was the first time I felt like
You're at least going to be okay.
I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Here was this woman who
Who provided some solace, I suppose.
It was solace, because I knew her before my mom passed away, but she literally became like an angel, which what I'm trying to say is that everybody needs that someone that they can hang on to, so that they give them hope, just faith. Because at times, some of us believe in God, but at that time you don't believe in God.
Certainly.
Looking back, I can generally say that time heals everything. You need to be patient. You need to be kind to yourself. You need to go through every emotion that you feel. Only time. If you are not ready, you are not ready. Time will tell. Time heals. You're not going to get through it. It's just going to be bearable for you to live with it. Because it's a part of you. It's happened to you.
You walk with it.
You walk with it. It's something that you're not going to say, to put it aside, that, oh, this is what happened. It's a part of you.
Hi, Lwanele.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for coming onto our studio, into our set, to come and shed some light on grief and how to survive grief.
Yeah.
I think the first question for me would really be, why would you choose to go into this field?
I think I'm drawn quite closely to understanding how people feel, because I've also gone through things of my own. So I think clinical psychologist sounded like the right profession. I wanted to be a counselor at first.
Yes.
When I was
and is there a difference?
There is a slight difference. So when I wanted to be a counsellor, I was growing up in Lusikisiki in Eastern Cape. I didn't really know that there was a thing called a psychologist. And a counsellor, really what they do is that they will do the counselling, which is a therapy, but also there's things that they're limited in not being able to do. So once I think I was in high school and I started learning a little bit more about other professions, and I realized psychology is much more broad. You're able to deal with clinical issues like depression, you're able to deal with, schizophrenias, psychosis, all of the other things that you would deal quite closely with a psychiatrist with.
So, Lwanele, we know that there are 5 to 7 stages of grief. Could you take us through what they are, how long they should last, and how do we single them out?
All right, so the 5 stages of grief. So the first one would be denial. So denial really just helps us it helps us not make sense with reality. We don't want to be in the reality of this person has passed away. We don't want to be in the reality that this person will never see them again. So the denial kind of helps us. It's a coping mechanism in the moment of shock, so which is part of the 7 stages. So in that moment of shock, you don't want to understand that I'm never going to see my mother, my brother, my sister ever again. You just want to live in the moment that they're still there. And then from that point, you can get quite angry, which is part of the other stage. You're angry, why did this really happen? What could I have done? Which really leads to the next stage of guilt. So should I have done something? Was there anything that I could have done? Was there something that, could be avoided? You'd find that a lot with, accident and suicide. Were there any signs that I should have actually, seen? And then bargaining. So bargaining is kind of like a back and forth of, I understand this person is not here anymore, but how do I live without them? How do I cope? How do I move on? Because part of the, after a person has passed away, there's a lot of people around you, family, flowers, chocolates, everything. And then when the funeral has passed, you start that grieving process all on your own. Yeah. And you don't know how to deal with that. How do I adapt to this person not being here? So that bargaining stage is really just a back and forth of, this person is here, but this person is also not here. You want to call them, you forget sometimes, like, oh, actually, I want to, I want to ask them something, because, momentarily your mind doesn't tell you that this person is gone. Yeah. And then you get into the depression state when you really realize that actually this person is not here. They're not coming back. They will never be back. So you get into this very deep, dark space of being depressed, of understanding that they're not here. They'll never come back. And then the last stage, which is acceptance. Accepting the reality that is. And acceptance is not saying, I'm okay. It just says that I'm accepting that this person is not here, and I'm allowing myself to go through the process of healing. And the stages go back and forth. So you don't go in a linear process. You don't go from one stage to the other stage.
What do people who are going through grief need to do initially? And I ask this because it's such a layered question, because when it happens to you, you literally don't know. Like Penny told us earlier, she didn't know what to do with herself. She couldn't breathe, she couldn't pack, she couldn't anything. But at some point, chemically, I think, even logically, your mind is going to find a center. What is the first thing you do?
Sure. I mean, I don't think there's necessarily a first thing that you can do or a particular thing that you can do. I think really this ranges from person to person and what your coping mechanisms usually are when you go through any other kind of difficulty. Because I think part of the thing that, throws people off is wanting to do the right thing or wanting to do something that's going to take the pain away. And I think that's usually what even sets you back, because you're trying to take this pain away, this gut feeling, this pain on your chest, this person, it feels like someone is kneeling on your chest or something, because there's just so much pain, even physically, and not just emotionally. So you're trying to take this pain away by not having the pain. And I think that's not going to happen. And I think that's the sad reality when you've lost someone. You're not going to feel the pain. You are going to feel the pain. And I think one of the things that you can do, if you're not ready to start thinking about what's the most painful thing for you in losing this particular person, distract yourself. Right.
And what are those distractions? What kind of distractions?
So the kinds of distractions that you can do is, focusing on work. If you're feeling like that's something that can help you remove away. So distracting yourself is not an avoidance. And I think that's the difference between that is that you want to distract yourself so that you can calm down, but not distract yourself that you don't actually process the loss, right? So if you're a person who likes, music, if you're a person who likes exercise, if you're a person that likes working, whatever it is that brings a sense of calm for you, because that's what you want. You want a little bit of a grounding, to feel your feet on the ground, to feel like you're a human being again, to feel like your mind is not going all over the place and that you're actually losing it. So that's what you want to do. People have done things ranging from freezing a lemon so that they can hold on and feel just the temperature of the lemon will help you kind of like ground your senses, and grounding your senses will bring your mind back. So whatever it is that you feel as a person will help you kind of like ground your mind so you don't have as many thoughts that will overwhelm you, because thoughts can be overwhelming.
Yes.
Thoughts can just burden you because, like I talked about, the grief, the guilt, the sadness, the anger, all of these things can all come at the same time.
And it's too much.
And it's too much, it's too much. So one of the things that you have to understand is that you're going to be in pain. Don't try to take the pain away, but also just help yourself distract at first so that you can calm down a little bit and then start the processing. And you're not going to be able to do the process all on your own. And I think that's the other thing, is that you have at some point you have to reach out to a friend, a sister, a family member, a therapist, whatever it is, because in the moment, there's so much that's happening and you're so in it emotionally that you'll never be able to sit left or right, black and white from that particular situation. But someone else may be able to calm you down. And I think it's also important, not only for the person who's going through the grieving process, but the person supporting the other person.
Which is very important for me, yeah.
Yeah, because the person who's supporting shouldn't make you feel better. That's not what the job is at first. The job is being there with the person. And I think sometimes we undermine that. We undermine just saying, I don't know what to say to you. I don't know how to help you through this process, but I'm here for you. Just those simple words can say so much for a person to say, I'm not trying to say it will be okay, because that's irritating, to be honest.
And because nothing is going to be okay at that
nothing
point.
is going to be okay. It doesn't feel like your world will ever come back to normal. And a person says to you, it's going to be okay. When you are that support system, you don't necessarily have to say this wonderful thing to them that will heal them, because they're not going to heal at that point.
Certainly.
It's just saying, sometimes it's even saying, I really don't know what to say to you, but I want to be here for you.
Yeah.
That's so
and
comforting.
that will ring in their mind, because even in those moments that they really don't feel like having anyone, I think when somebody has said to you, I am here for you, it rings something even in you to say, I also don't know what I need, but can I call Lwanele? Just listen. Yeah,
Absolutely.
certainly.
Absolutely.
We hear a lot of people sometimes say therapy is a waste of time. A lot of people don't believe in it. I know personally, I before undergoing my own process of therapy, I used to think, I pray.
Yeah.
Who better to speak to than God? I have a very supportive mother and family. So what would speaking to a stranger really do?
Yeah.
And I found that in speaking to a stranger, it was where I was really vulnerable enough to be myself and say the things that other people might find uncomfortable, that other people may find, too sensitive to be able to deal with.
So sometimes people go to therapy because they're not ready for it. Sometimes it's because they're being forced to go to therapy and they don't want that process yet. But also when you're ready to go back, when you're ready to go to therapy, when you've taken that decision that this is something that I want to do, even then it's still not an easy process. You are vulnerable. This person may tell you things that you don't necessarily want to hear. You may go through, and you may also realize your own guilt, because I think guilt is an easy thing to remember or to realize when you've gone through the process of healing yourself. But before that, you actually don't realize that the emotion that you're feeling is guilt. You just know that I want to avoid any memory of thinking about this person that has left because I just want to cry all the time, or because I'm just emotional all the time. You're not realizing that the reason why I'm actually so emotional is because I'm afraid, that perhaps I could have done something about this.
Yes.
What happens if I had checked, if the tire was okay? What happens if actually someone said, just check the tire before we leave, and then you forgot, and you've buried that memory of that person asking you to check the tire before the accident so much that if you go to therapy, you may realize some of that.
It's going to be uncovered.
It's going to be uncovered. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to sit with these emotions of, perhaps this accident could have been avoided by this, or what happens if I had checked if the food was okay, or what if I had eaten and someone ate something poisonous. All of these thoughts that can go through your mind over and over, and sometimes it's not even because you would have done anything. And I think that's
in fact, more often than not,
you wouldn't have done anything. You wouldn't have done anything. And I think part of the grieving process is also having to forgive yourself of things that you didn't know you had to do, but also things that you wouldn't have even known to do. Because the guilt process because you're feeling so guilty, and people will be like, don't feel guilty. There's nothing to feel guilty about. You hear them, but you don't recognize that, right? You're not internalizing that. You're not hearing it properly, because for you think, but you guys don't understand. This is something that I would have done. This is something I should have done. And part of that forgiving yourself is not to say that you did anything wrong. It's to say you're forgiving yourself even for the things that you thought you should have done, or you think you should have done, so that you can allow yourself to move forward. Because if you don't do that process, you'll always feel like, I don't deserve anything better. You know, why am I happy? You know what, this person is gone. Why am I laughing? You know, people are gonna look at me and say, why am I not grieving? You know, and you know, grieving.
And that's been a big one for me,
Is
because
it?
I'm in the public space, and I remember wanting to smile, wanting to feel happy, and I just honestly didn't know how it would be received, because I just felt exactly that, like it can't be that it's not even a year and I'm smiling, I'm making all these plans to move on, but like you say, the reality is that it did happen, and we need to find ways to move on. So I often hear that therapy isn't necessarily something that we need to do when something bad has happened. I've often heard that it's something that we need to continually do as part of our medical checkups, our medical routine, just to kind of keep ourselves in check. What kind of people would you then say you would suggest for therapy?
Well, I think it's for everyone. So I'm a therapist, so I advocate quite a lot for therapy. And the reason why I say this is that sometimes we don't even know that we are bleeding and walking around there with wounds open and bleeding. And we don't realize that until we go to therapy. So sometimes you just such an angry person, or we know you as a micromanager, or all of these things, but sometimes it can go back into an anxiety. Where does that anxiety come from? Where does a sense of wanting to control everything come from? So I think everyone needs to go to therapy. I think everyone would benefit from therapy. And yes, there are different kinds of therapy. Some therapies will go and, I guess, do a history checking from your childhood, and some therapies will check the symptoms. Some therapies will be addressing, you know, a phobia or an anxiety of some sort. So I think the idea that people have sometimes is that therapy is only for crazy people, or people going through a traumatic experience, and it really isn't that. There's different kinds of therapies, and I think your therapist is very good at the first few sessions of letting you know what kind of therapy you'll need.
Certainly.
Right? Because that's what the first session would be about. It would be about just getting an evaluation of what's going on in your life. What do you think, has happened? How are you doing with your career? How are you doing with your work? Because if you're not mentally okay, and by mentally okay, it doesn't even mean that if you're not crazy or having a psychosis or whatever, but if you're not mentally in the good space, you may even sabotage yourself in different kinds of ways, in relationships, at work, in all sorts of areas. So I think therapy is for everyone. I think everyone would benefit from it, and I think there is a different kind of therapy for every kind of situation.
Right.
Even when you're happy, because sometimes it's about, I'm so happy, but I want to go to therapy so I can understand what is it about this moment or the season in my
gives me
life,
joy.
that gives me so much joy, so I can, kind of like maintain it, so I can give myself the same kind of self-love, if it's self-love that's allowing you to go through the happy process. So it's not a let's all cry together kind of space all the time. Sometimes it is about, let me understand myself, let me understand my purpose, let me understand my goal, let me understand where am I going from here. Let me understand, why have I chosen the path that I have chosen? So it's for people. It's definitely for people who want to explore more about themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Lwanele, for speaking to us. I think I've personally learned so much. And that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to After Dark with myself, Kayise. If you would like to catch up, do remember that our podcast is available on most podcast platforms and also on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.